Before the billion-dollar sponsorships, the roaring crowds, and the high-tech machines pushing the limits of speed, Formula One was nothing more than an idea, an unstructured, chaotic, and dangerous dream. But how did this dream become reality? It wasn't born in a boardroom. It was forged in the dust and danger of early motor racing, where drivers risked their lives for glory. No rules, no safety, just raw speed and fearless ambition. This is the story of how Formula One came to life, a journey of power, politics, and pure adrenaline. And it all starts long before 1950, the wild beginnings of Grand Prix racing. Before Formula One, racing was a lawless battleground. In the early 1900s, Grand Prix races were organized chaos, held on public roads with no barriers, minimal regulations, and no second chances. Drivers pushed their machines to the limit, knowing that one wrong move could mean disaster. The first ever Grand Prix, held in 1906 in France, was a brutal test of endurance. The race lasted nearly 12 hours, with cars barely capable of surviving the distance. Engines overheated, tires exploded, and drivers wrestled with vehicles that were more beasts than machines. Yet despite the dangers, the sport exploded in popularity. But there was a problem. Without standard rules, races were unpredictable and often deadly. Manufacturers like Mercedes, Alfa Romeo, and Bugatti developed faster cars. But without regulation, the competition became a survival game rather than a structured sport. By the 1920s and 30s, racing had turned into a nationalistic arms race. Germany's auto union and Mercedes-Benz, backed by government funding, built cars so advanced they seemed untouchable. But speed came at a cost. Crashes were common, and fatality rates were alarming. Racing had become a spectacle of both bravery and tragedy. The war that paused everything. Then came World War II. Racing stopped overnight. Tracks were abandoned. The golden era of Grand Prix racing was over. But as the world rebuilt, a new idea was forming, one that would change motorsport forever. With World War II over, the world was desperate for excitement. Nations were rebuilding, economies were recovering, and people craved something thrilling to bring back the spirit of competition. But there was still no universal set of rules or a structured championship. That's when the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, FIA, stepped in. They had a vision, a new structured racing series that would bring together the best teams, the best drivers, and the fastest cars under one championship. And in 1950, Formula One was officially born. The birth of Formula One, the first ever Formula One World Championship race, was held at Silverstone, England, on May 13, 1950. It was a spectacle unlike anything before. Crowds filled the grandstands, and even King George VI attended, proving that this was more than just a sport. It was an event of national importance. On the track, Italian driver Giuseppe Farina, driving for Alfa Romeo, made history by winning the inaugural race. But in the shadows, another name was rising: Juan Manuel Fangio, the man who would soon dominate the sport. Formula One had arrived, but one thing hadn't changed: the danger. These cars were fast, the tracks unforgiving, and in the early years, every race was a gamble with death. The era of legends and riskin'. The early days of Formula One racing wasn't just about speed, it was about survival. The cars were raw, unpredictable machines. The tracks were treacherous, and the risks were as high as the rewards. But it was also an era of heroic drivers, those brave enough to tame these beasts of metal and rubber. One of the first true legends was Juan Manuel Fangio, the Argentinian who seemed to dance with death every time he stepped into a car. Winning 5 world championships in the 1950s, Fangio became the epitome of F1 excellence. But for every victory, there was a cost. Many drivers never made it to the finish line, not because of mechanical failures, but because the dangers of the sport were all too real. Technology was evolving, but safety remained an afterthought. The introduction of mid-engine cars in the late 1950s and early 1960s revolutionized the sport, making it more competitive and forcing teams to rethink car design. However, serious safety regulations only emerged in the late 1960s, responding to the rising number of tragic accidents. The transformation of Formula One. By the late 1960s, Formula One had become more than just a sport. It was a global spectacle, attracting millions of fans, major sponsorships, and international media attention. The question wasn't just about speed anymore. It was about how to turn F1 into an ever-evolving show for a growing global audience. The sport expanded beyond Europe, reaching locations like Canada, Brazil, and Japan. Suddenly, Formula One wasn't just a European pastime, it was a worldwide phenomenon. But with its growing popularity, F1 faced a new challenge, balancing the spirit of racing with the demands of entertainment and commercialization. Enter technology and money. By the 1980s, sponsorships became the lifeblood of F1. Names like Marlboro, Shell, and Rolex stamped their logos on cars, while television networks broadcast the races to millions. The sport was no longer just about the drivers. It was about brands, strategy, and the global business behind it. As Ferrari, McLaren, and Williams dominated the 80s and 90s, teams poured millions into research and development, creating the most advanced racing machines the world had ever seen. Yet as cars became more technologically sophisticated, the role of the driver began to change. Was technology beginning to overshadow human skill? The future of Formula One, from its chaotic beginnings on the roads of Europe to becoming the multi-billion-dollar global phenomenon we know today, Formula One's journey has been nothing short of extraordinary. What started as a dangerous, unregulated pursuit of speed has now transformed into a high-tech, world-spanning spectacle that thrills millions of fans every year. But as with every great story, the question remains, has F1 lost its original spirit, or has it evolved into something even more captivating? F1 has always adapted to survive, but with advances in artificial intelligence, sustainability, and new race formats on the horizon, we might be on the verge of the biggest transformation yet. Could we see electric-powered F1 cars? Will technology take over the sport, or will there be a return to a more driver-centered experience? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about the evolution of F1 and its future? And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the origins of Formula One, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss our next exploration into the fascinating world of motorsport. Stay tuned for more stories, more speed, and more legends. Until next time, keep your engines revving.